Well, thank you, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the New London Education System, and the New London Day for hosting this event and sponsoring it. We are at a critical point in our city's history. We are switching our form of government for the first time in a century, and we're doing that to get leadership in our community. What kind of leadership do we seek, and what kind of city do we want to be, is really what's at stake in this election. My opponent and I have differing opinions on a number of issues and different ideas of where we want to lead the city. And I welcome this opportunity to debate so that we can make those differences clear, answer your questions, and help you make up your minds as you cast your vote in what will be a critical election in the city of New London. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm looking forward to it, and I thank you all again for your attendance. This turnout is fantastic.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you.
I think it's on.
Did you shut me off on
I
purpose?
didn't shut you
Okay.
off on purpose.
Good evening, everyone. As Darrell stated, this is the first time ever that you, the people, get to select your mayor. I feel this is the missing link from taking New London from potential to prosperity. This city has had so many people promise them so many things, yet underperform. And now it's time to perform. This is not an election for promises. This is an election for production. The leader that you select must have a proven track record in leadership and the ability to get things done. New London deserves better, and New London will get better. I ask that you respectfully look at the questions, ask the candidates very candidly. I am open to any question, and I truly appreciate the city coming out. It shows that you care. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Paul, your first question, please, and it will be for Mike.
Mr. Buscetto.
Mr. Chanier?
Police Chief Ackley has alleged that you meddled in her department to such a degree that she can no longer effectively function as chief. Should this concern voters as to how you would deal with department heads if elected mayor?
Sure. You know, Chief Ackley made a private arrangement to retire from the City of New London. This arrangement was not known to anyone, including myself. 2 questions were answered the other night and were reported by my favorite newspaper in New London. One, was Mike Buscetto's name ever mentioned as a reason for retirement during the negotiated agreement? The answer by the city attorney was no. Someone else then asked another question to the city manager. Did Chief Ackley ever bring up Mike Buscetto's name as a reason for her departing? The answer was no. I think that says enough. Thank you.
Darrell?
Well, Councilor Buscetto has responded to these very serious allegations by talking about the deal that the chief had to retire. That is a deflection from the very serious accusation that when the chief law enforcement officer in your community stands up in public, on the record, and says that you have engaged in a pattern of threats, favoritism, undue influence, unethical conduct, and that it has risen to such a level that it has undermined her ability to lead a law enforcement agency. That is serious, extremely serious, and it requires a full investigation by an outside entity that can be trusted to give us the true story of what's going on in our police department. I support Chief Ackley. I think she's on the right track. She has the right approach to public safety and crime reduction in our city. She has been a force for reform in our city, and if elected mayor, I would seek to keep her as police chief. But I would say this. In the course of this debate, there's been a lot of smoke, and there's been a lot of politics, and there's a lot of discussions. But at the end of the day, what concerns me is that the only way this works out in my opponent's favor is if the 25-year veteran police officer, chief of police, got up and lied. Anyone is innocent until proven guilty, and we deserve due process. Everyone. But I don't believe that our chief would get up in public and lie.
Mike?
Oh,
Excuse me, there is to be no applause. Thank you very much. Mike? 30
Well,
seconds.
I must say, I'll reiterate it one more time. When the chief came to city council to make the accusations, rather than go through a formal process, she stated many things. One of them was that the reason for my retirement is Mike Buscetto. However, she may have in fact misrepresented that. Because as I said, and I'll say it again, the city manager who negotiated the private deal said my name was not brought up. The city attorney who negotiated the deal said my name was not brought up.
And your time is up. Thank you.
That's all I had to say.
Great, thanks. Paul, your second question, please.
Mr. Finizio,
No.
They can't hear in the back.
They,
Daryl, they can't hear Daryl.
hold on.
How about that?
Just a minute, and we'll let the technical person turn up the volume.
Test? Louder? How about I just project like that?
There
That
you
work?
go.
All right, I
All
like
right.
it.
Wait a minute. No, that's good. We want people to hear.
How about now?
Yeah.
Ah, wonderful.
You can clap for power.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
All right, we'll begin your time.
all right. Mr. Finizio, you have been registered both as a Republican and as a Democrat. You were elected to the Wesley Town Council, but moved before you finished your term. You moved to New London last year, now you want to be the mayor. Why should the Democratic voters, given that unpredictability, elect you as their nominee?
Well, I would challenge the idea that it is unpredictability. I have always been a progressive. I was aligned with a very liberal wing of the Rhode Island Republican Party, embodied by the Chafee family, that stood for reproductive health rights for women, environmental concerns, and many of the civil rights issues and social issues that are at the heart of the Democratic Party's values. I don't feel that my change in partisanship reflects any change in my ideology or approach to public service. As to leaving the Westerly Town Council, it was at the end of my term with only a few months left in a lame duck session when I was unexpectedly offered a full fellowship to teach urban policy and planning at Northeastern University, and I decided that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I couldn't pass on. But I was widely praised in leaving the council, and all of the councilors that I served with, Democrat and Republican, have donated to and are supporting my campaign for mayor in New London.
Mike, you may respond.
One thing you do not have to worry about is my stability in New London. I come from a family who's been business owners for decades, and you know that business, Michael's Dairy. That's proven. I come from a family of blue-collar individuals, from tow trucks to construction. This is not a hedge fund family that I've been portrayed as. And I have to tell you, I am proud to announce tonight that the unions that represent every single employee have endorsed my candidacy for mayor. And if you have not read it, the teachers endorsed me this evening. The Public Works Department, who did a great job, the Police Department, the Fire Department. A chief is only as good as his or her Indians. And I will tell all of the teachers and all of the blue-collar people who keep New London going, I will not stand ahead of you. I will not stand behind you. I will stand with you, as I have done for many, many years. This trust is built over time. This is not someone like my opponent who has lived in 3 cities in 4 years. This is stability, and that leadership will continue on as a contributing member to New London. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Anne, are you?
30-second
Oh, I'm
response.
very sorry, excuse me. You have to keep me on track, thank you.
No problem. I will concede the point that my opponent is supported by the political establishment in New London through and through. And I ran for mayor because I believe we need to change that establishment, because it hasn't been working for us. And why did I run when I'm so new in town? Because I've done this before. I know how rough it is. I know how tough it is. And I knew that nobody else probably would see it through. And lo and behold, who's standing here? There's one option for change, and I knew that was how it would probably come down. So whatever people will say about it, that's why I did it.
Thank you. I'm very sorry that I forgot the rebuttal.
I won't hold it against you. I
Thank you.
promise.
Anne, would you ask the first question, please, from the audience?
I'm not going to be able to, can you hear me? I'm not going to be able to ask every question that the audience has submitted, so I'm trying to consolidate, if there's a lot of Riverside Park questions or a lot of Fort Trumbull questions, so have patience. Okay. How would you connect these phrases? Central Corridor Railroad, Farmers Market, pedestrians, art galleries, and nightlife.
Whoa. Mike, that's yours.
Could you repeat? No, I'm just teasing.
One more time, you want to repeat the list?
You want me to connect them and come up with a word or a phrase?
How would you put it all together? How would you make these things make New London more vibrant? Central Corridor Railroad, Farmers Market, pedestrians, art galleries, and nightlife.
Okay. I think we're doing that now. The farmers market, for example, is trying to flourish by getting vendors there every Friday, and I support that on the parade. The Central Rail Corridor is easy. When you talk about nightlife, New London's restaurant scene is spectacular. And at this time, I'd like you to know that there are 23 restaurant owners also supporting my candidacy for mayor. In order to connect anything in New London, you obviously need connections between city employees, between city business owners, between connections in the business world. New London will flourish. If you do not know New London, if you do not know the people of New London, if you do not know the people who do business in New London, it will just be another 5 or 10 years of promises. I am not into over-promising and under-performing. I am into production, and that's what this campaign will be all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell?
Well, the complexity of your question describes the complexity of this job. A mayor of New London cannot come into this position, which is going to have to deal with so many different things that affect each other in the city, without a variety of experience. I have worked not only in the private sector, running a family-owned small business and my own law practice, but I've also worked in government as the Senior Criminal Justice Policy Analyst to the New York City Council, overseeing the NYPD and the FDNY. And I've also worked in academia, researching urban environmental sustainability. The new mayor of New London is not going to be able to deal with any of these issues that we discussed tonight in a vacuum. Public safety doesn't exist on its own. It affects education, and education affects it. We need an integrated, long-term plan to connect all of these things that you mentioned, and a list that goes on for pages more, which is why when I declared, I didn't just say, here I am, I'm a good leader, I have a good record, although I believe I do, and I stand behind it. I also released a detailed platform of what I would do if elected, and it's on my website at finizioformayor.com. It's 40 pages long, but it only takes about 40 minutes to read. But in it, I talk about how we do these different things, how they relate to each other, and how you pay for them, so that if you review that and you vote for me, you know exactly what I will do if elected and how I intend to get it done.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes. New London has seen its fair share of platforms, studies, and promises. I have one question, and this is for the audience. Raise your hand if you know people who moved to New London specifically for the school system. No one. Please raise your hand if you know someone, a friend, a relative, or a coworker who has decided to relocate or not choose New London because of the school system. We've had similar superintendents come with tremendous resumes. They did so many other things in so many other towns. They had big promises for the city, academia, doctorates, turned around total school systems, but for some reason, when they got to New London, they fell flat.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Did I get the card? No? Okay.
There was a confusion there.
Confused, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It was the correct time. All right, Anne, let's bring forth a new question from the audience.
How will you close the gap between the city and the youth and the community? And please give examples that are not already being done.
All right. Darrell? Yes.
A major part of that will be embodied by whoever is elected mayor. The mayor needs to integrate him or herself within the school system, be in the classroom, be at youth groups, being a mentor, leading students as they fulfill their high school public service graduation requirement on cleanup efforts throughout the city. It's a personal connection, which is why I believe the Charter Commission made the new mayor an ex officio non-voting member of the Board of Ed, to try to bridge the gap between our schools and our city. In that capacity, the mayor should also be working to connect young people with city government. You know, one thing that surprised me in this campaign is how many young people have come forward to volunteer on our campaign, and how young people are getting activated in this political process. Because if we cannot activate our youth in our city, then we cannot advance as a city.
Mike?
As a sponsor of the Youth Talent Show, as a volunteer coach in Little League, as a coach in softball with my wife, as a coach in youth basketball, to be connected, you have to be involved. You have to know our kids. I'll say it again, anyone can say we're going to bridge the gap, and we're going to connect, and we're going to do this. As a mentor to a young student from the Science and Technology Magnet School this year, I got to learn a little bit more about the youth, and I call them young ladies and gentlemen. And I will tell you this, they need to be respected, and they need to respect our community. We need to raise the bar and let them perform. Let their talent shine. Too many times, they've been promised things, and they have come away empty-handed. To bridge the gap is to get them involved. As an involved citizen for decades, they need someone they can trust. And I can tell you, New London kids, they don't trust you right off the bat. For someone to come into town and say, here I am, doesn't happen that way. They expect proven results. They expect support for programming. They expect support.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You get it.
I got it now.
You can catch up with it later. Darrell?
I did not move to New London to run for mayor. I moved to New London before this office was created, because my first contact with New London as an adult was when I was training as a boxer at Strike Zone Gym on Bank Street, a gym you've supported, Mike, and I thank you for that. But I met those kids for years, and I know it takes time to build relationships, but I love the kids I met. I love the people I met. I moved here because New London had already become my home because of the people here. I am not an outsider applying for a job. I'm a New Londoner running to be your mayor.
Thank you very much. And we'll call for another question from the audience, and then we'll follow that with a question from Paul. Ann?
As mayor, how will you encourage business business growth, not only in the downtown, but also Hodges Square and the Broad and Coleman Street corridors.
Okay. I think that will be Mike.
Okay. Being a business person and being the only candidate who has employees, I understand small business. I understand what it takes to meet a payroll. I understand what it means to support local businesses. As candidate Finizio mentioned, people donate to campaigns and support campaigns. I have the support of the business community. Whether it's Hodges Square, Coleman Street, Bank Street, or Montauk Avenue, if you're going to do business here, you have to know the business people. They have to trust that you will not mislead them and not overpromise and underperform. It's really simple, and this debate should not make things difficult or make you believe that there's this huge plan that's going to take New London to a different height. It's communication.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Darrell?
Well, the councilman has been on the council for 4 years. Hodges Square looks the same. If we're going to change our priorities in New London, we need to change our values. We need to understand that every single neighborhood in this city is equal, that every single person is equal. Our current crop of leadership has not done that, because if they had, would we have created this office in the first place? Why are we all here? We're not all here because we think things have been working well for us in New London. They haven't been working for Hodges Square. They haven't been working for Coleman Street. They haven't been working for the people who live in public housing. They haven't been working for our arts community, for our minority communities. It hasn't worked. I do have a record with proven results, in government and outside of government. It's not just talk, folks. It's a real, honest way to get there. It's one thing to say it's all plans, and it's another thing not to have a plan, or to have the same plan that we've had for a very long time. It's time to innovate in New London. It's time for dynamic leadership in New London, because that's the way we will change those priorities. That's the way we will bring attention to the areas in our community that have been neglected. If I'm your mayor, you can rest assured that every single person, every single neighborhood will be valued the same.
Mike?
Thank you. Easy Street, 10 homes, the first private single-family development in the city of New London in over 25 years. Maybe while I was on council for 4 years, Hodges Square did not get fixed up, but Bates Woods did. Corkins Park did. Montauk Avenue did. Sidewalks throughout the city did. And we continue on and on. The parade did. New London is not a pit. There are many things that are going well in New London. Not everything is wrong.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask those of you who are sitting, if you have a chair that's vacant near you, would you raise your hand? We have a lot of people standing up. And so some of you may wish to find yourself a more comfortable place to be. Not really moving. I guess they want to stand. True. Lots of empty chairs. I guess they're fine. So we'll take a second while you settle, and I'm going to turn to Paul and have him direct a question, and it will be to Mr. Finizio first. Finizio, I'm sorry. I'll call him Darrell, and then I won't mess it up.
Mr. Finizio, I've read that platform, and in your platform you state that, quote, residents must come to see police not as a threat, but as a partner in building a safer city, and you call for better training and clearer procedures for how police interact with the community. So that seems to suggest that you feel we have a police-community relations problem in New London, yet you feel Chief Ackley is doing a good job. So I'm having a little trouble with that. Maybe you can reconcile that.
I will. 2 years ago, everyone can remember seeing all the squad cars bunched up in one spot. And now police are out walking the beat, going into businesses, going into homes, going into neighborhoods. That's the reform the chief put in place to address the underlying problem of a disconnect between our police force and our community. She's on the right track, but she's being frustrated and fought every step of the way. What I'm saying is that she has started it rolling, but in police parlance, what we need to do is call her in some backup. Imagine if you had a good, common-sense, reform-minded chief with a mayor who understands and has worked on criminal justice issues in major cities. We will be able to build one of the best public safety apparatuses in the country here in New London. But absolutely we need community buy-in. And if you go out there and knock on doors in this city, you will know that a lot of people don't trust the police. But we can solve that, we can bridge that gap, and we can have an excellent public safety apparatus in New London.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I would say that I know there's one police officer here that the community trusts, and that's Mr. Anthony Nolan, who's done a great job.
Remember,
When-
we're no applause
For the candidates, you said.
for anybody.
A chief is only as good as his or her Indians. And as you know, the Indians are not exactly happy. A no confidence vote was nearly taken by unanimous margin. This is not about public safety. We have almost 100 police officers in our small city. If you take away the colleges, we're talking about 4.5 square miles to patrol. We need someone who wants to stay and get down to the core issues. When you talk about support, we gave support in the form of a deputy chief that was supposed to cut down on crime and cut down on finances. Instead now, we have that large salary in addition to a chief that has racked up almost 2,000 hours at a cost of $200,000 to the taxpayers. It's unacceptable. Those resources need to go down to the street. And as your mayor, I will continue to stand up for you and get those resources in the right place.
Thank you. Darrell?
We have some excellent police in New London. We've had some bad police in New London. We've had bad police procedures in the past in New London. The chief has been trying to correct our course, and I believe she has been resisted because people within the department feel they can outlast her. Because if Mike wins, she's gone, and they can go back to doing things the way they might like to do them. In any institutional bureaucracy, in any department, when you institute change, you are going to face resistance. And if the political leadership behind you is not only not supporting you but hurting you, you cannot affect change.
Thank you. Ann, do we have another hot question from our audience?
This is the same question, but I'm going to ask it a little different to each of you. To Darrell, if you had been on the council when the council voted to move forward with the sale of Riverside Park.
Excuse me, Ann, it's Darrell's the second person.
Well, he can answer it, and it doesn't matter which order they are. They can answer it in the right order.
Okay, thank
If
you.
you had been on the council when they voted to move forward with the sale of Riverside Park, how would you have voted and why? And to Mike, why did you vote in favor of moving forward with the sale of Riverside Park?
All right, well, we'll let Mike start because it's his turn.
Sure. The Coast Guard Academy, one of our greatest partners in the city of New London. The cadets who donate thousands of hours to our community needed to expand. Why would we not encourage them to expand, while at the same time having the community benefit from the expansion? I voted for a couple reasons. One, I always said, if there's any time for the people to decide on an issue, it's Riverside Park. And now I will explain my position. I am in favor of revitalizing Riverside Park as well as the surrounding neighborhood. We are going to receive $3 million for that property. And the reason I supported that is this will be the third largest park in the city of New London. And it will be a passive park space where we have the necessary funds to improve the property.
You'll have time at the end to add the rest that you wanted to say.
Okay.
Darrell?
I would have absolutely opposed the sale of Riverside Park. It is a disastrous move for the city, and everyone, regardless of who wins this primary or who is on the ballot in November for mayor, you should still go out and vote no on the sale of Riverside Park. Riverside Park is our largest last remaining open space in the city, and we are going to sell it to the federal government for $2.8 million. That will be gone in 2 or 3 years. Then the land will be off the tax rolls and inaccessible to the people, and any future development or use will be gone. 40 years from now, people will look back and say, I can't believe they sold that beautiful riverfront property for a song. We need Riverside Park. And Mike is incorrect. If you go to New London Landmarks and look at the map of the land they are buying, it looks like we're being left with the crusts of a sandwich. They are taking the entire center of the park and leaving us with unremediated land near the water which we can't access or use, rocky land near the new school that cannot be accessed or used, and one small hilly area of property that would be difficult to hold an event on the corner of Crystal Avenue and Adelaide Street. This is not a good deal. They would have been more honest to have just asked for the whole thing, because this idea of you're going to get the third largest park is really a ruse to get you to think that you're being left with something, when in fact you're being left with nothing, and we're selling it for peanuts.
Mike, you can respond.
Sure. So the facts are, Bates Woods is 85 acres, Calkins Park is 12 acres, and Riverside will be 9 acres. To put it in perspective, Toby May is 7 acres. Riverside is not scheduled for baseball fields, basketball courts, and tennis courts. If we can't figure out as a city what to do with 9 acres of passive park space, then we have some issues. What candidate Finizio did not say is, where would he get the money to fix Riverside if the Coast Guard doesn't give us the $3 million? You'll be paying for that.
Thank you. Paul, it's your turn. Do you have another question?
Who would I be asking it to? 'Cause-
You would be asking it to Mr. Buscetto.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong line. Forgive me. You
I
gotta
knew
keep
I
me
liked
honest,
you.
folks.
Well-
Keep me honest. It's okay.
Well, maybe,
It's okay.
if-
I really think that the first question your question goes to Darrell.
Well, if it's not a problem, maybe I should wait until, because I've already asked Mr. Finizio 2 questions and Mr. Buscetto only 1.
You may do that the next
So
time.
next
then.
time,
Okay.
just to be fair to them.
Okay, well then I'll call upon Ann for another community question, please.
Mr. Finizio supports a land value tax in his platform. Please tell us how that is good for the city.
Land value taxation is used in the state of Pennsylvania, most European countries. It moves the assessment value of your building to the land only, so that future assessments are based only on fluctuations in land value. It removes the disincentive for property owners to fix up their buildings. We have so many buildings in our city that are dilapidated on the outside because owners don't want to fix them up, because then their assessment goes up and their taxes go up. This is a way to remove that disincentive, encourage private property owners to fix up their properties so that it doesn't come out of your tax dollars to do it, and so that we revitalize neighborhoods that are in desperate need. Our old plan for revitalizing a neighborhood was to knock it down. So some people say that LVT is a radical idea. Well, it's not as radical as bulldozers. We need to try different innovative techniques, and this is one that is on the table, and we should at the very least consider it.
Mike?
New candidate, new taxes. There's a booklet, if you'd like to go see how much your taxes will increase at City Hall. Candidate Finizio has to be honest. Montauk Avenue, Ocean Avenue, Pequot Avenue. All your taxes are going up. some from $300 up to $1,000. When you look at us as counselors and say, we have a grave concern, we're overtaxed, how do you tell the 80-year-old woman on Ocean Avenue on a fixed income that because of land value tax, her taxes are going up $800? If you could explain that, I'm willing to listen.
Well, that's an easy explanation. It wouldn't apply to her. We would draw a zone because the enabling legislation says you pick a zone, and the zone I would pick is the city business district. So all the major landowners that you just mentioned would be exempted. It's a revenue neutral system, so it doesn't raise anyone's taxes. It just shifts the evaluation in the first year. But more importantly, I proposed a full-time grants coordinator for the city and a full-time legislative lobbyist to generate revenues from outside the tax base. Councilor Buscetto had the opportunity to vote for it in this budget, and he didn't. So I've proposed real ways to raise revenues outside of taxes. This council didn't do it. If elected, I will.
Thank you. That takes care of that one, right? So, Paul, your question now for Mr. Buscetto.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Buscetto, you mentioned earlier tonight your support seemingly virtually from all the city unions. The Democrats also have 2 policemen and 1 firefighter, I believe, running for the council. As a taxpayer, wouldn't I be concerned that if Mr. Buscetto is elected mayor, that the unions will be in charge of the city?
That's a great question. And as you know, and as you've been covering the city council, you know that over 4 years, taxes have stabilized dramatically. That coincides with me entering politics as a businessman. Program review saved over $3 million for everyone sitting in this room. The unions were involved. They gave concessions. They worked with us. Just because someone supports you doesn't mean you owe them financial payback. What you owe them is leadership. The people of New London, and I've held 23 living room discussions, they're asking for the neighborhood to be safe. They're asking for the neighborhood to be clean. They want to walk to parks. They want to enjoy New London. Very simple. The unions are part of that. And without their support, as I stated earlier, a mayor is only as good, or a business person, as their employees.
Right? Response?
I come from a labor family. My parents were both in unions. My partner's in a union. I believe in the rights of unions and the right to collective bargaining. But I also believe that no union should dictate city policy to management. It is essential that there is a fair balance between the interests of the taxpayers and the interests of the workers. This is not meant to demonize workers or be confrontational. It is meant to say that the mayor cannot merely favor labor or merely favor the tax base, must look to what is fair to both. And because I have not been willing to perhaps say every single thing on every union questionnaire that a union may want to hear, I may not be their preferred candidate. However, if elected, I will work fairly with all city employees on all collective bargaining negotiations. I favor independent contract negotiators to do that. I voted for that in Westerly. I feel that that's an effective, fair way to negotiate contracts to remove the politics from the process. And I believe that moving forward in the City of New London, while it's important to have someone who understands the needs of working families and labor households, it's also important to make sure that no candidate is dictated to by any set of special interests within the city.
Mike?
So far, candidate Finizio needs an independent negotiator, a lobbyist, a grant writer. I don't think those positions are free. That's what the mayor's for. The mayor has to have an outstanding and existing relationship with state and the federal delegation, as I do. We don't need these costly positions. If you need all 3 of those, You are not qualified to be the mayor.
Thank you. As I suggested early at the start of this meeting, that we would take a few questions from the floor. If you are interested in asking a question, please make your way to the microphone and line up down the aisle over here. We'll take several. And but I just remind you that please, there are no statements and there are no loadeds. It's real questions that the real people of New London want to have asked at this meeting. Seeing no one make their way, I'll ask, oh, is there someone? Please, please. Can you help the microphone there? Ooh. I don't think you can pull it. Can you come a little closer?
I heard a lot of stuff about like all the old stuff y'all need to fix and all that. I heard no one speak on what y'all need to do, anything new, like the return of our youth programs, the lack of the support there is for handicap accessibility and financial help for handicaps, and how we're being treated as second citizens. As I'm sitting right over there, I heard no one even speak on that, and no one bring my question up. I would just like to know if whoever's elected, will that change? Like, will we return teen pregnancy prevention, our Teens Off the Hook, our all stuff for youth, and will accessibility and financial help be more open, and will handicapped people not be treated as second citizens?
Thank you very much. Very good question, Mr. Finzio.
Sure. Well, a couple of things you raise. One is support for youth programs. We absolutely need to do that, and that's why I do support a grants writer. Because if we have one person working full-time in the City of New London, bringing in revenue that can go to these organizations and these charities and these youth groups, then we can get more activity and we can get more support. As for handicap accessibility, as I'm sure you know, our high school is completely inaccessible to the tune of 90%. And because of that, we're about to lose $8 million in federal ADA money. So in order to respond to that, we're going to have to pass a bond in the first 2 years to either build a new high school or fix up the old one. And I personally believe that the mayor is going to be essential on getting that bond passed.
Mike?
Sure. As I stated earlier, you have to prioritize spending. The youth affairs, something I support wholeheartedly. Not by just preaching, but by doing. The Youth Talent Show, the Little League, the Guard Art Center, the Hygienic. All of these need to be made available, all of these venues, to everyone throughout our city, whether you're handicapped or in perfectly good health. You should not be denied access at any time. This is the sticking point of this campaign. We have resume or real action. For you to sit there and be promised the world, I will tell you right now, government cannot pay for everything. And as sad as that is, some people are left, like you said, without receiving the adequate services that this city needs. And that's why I will not advocate for huge overtime for privileged city employees. I will not bring in grant writer, lobbyist, and other positions. That money needs to go to the people of New London, like yourself, so that you can enjoy this great city. And you need to be able to come to this event on nice sidewalks that are handicap accessible, which I know you can't.
I don't ride on the sidewalk, I ride on the street.
That's right, and you need to go on a sidewalk.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your question.
Do we have a 30-second
Yes, you do.
response?
Yes, you do.
My opponent's slogan is one city, one team. He says tonight that a chief is only good as his Indians. And then he says, you want to hire all these people, you're unqualified for the job, you're supposed to do it all yourself. Well, which is it? Are we going to have a team, or are we going to have a dictator? I believe that these positions bring in the money that we will need to pay for these things. because you can't promise anything without telling people how you are going to pay for it. And what I'm proposing is outside revenue, not tax dollars.
Thank you very much. We have a person at the, and I did not say at the beginning of the questions that you probably should identify yourself so your community members know who you are. Would you mind?
Not at all. My name is Gil Shasha. Question for both of the gentlemen, because I gather neither will be elected next week. Why do we have political parties involved in our election? Are there issues between the parties? And what do you offer as a Democrat against the likely Republican nominee?
Mike.
Why, is there a problem between the parties? Don't we agree on everything? If you look what's happening nationally, it's atrocious. But that's the system. Nobody in this city is going to change that for the upcoming election. Nobody nationally is going to change that upcoming. But just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean you should have points against you. When people talk about years of ruin and the machine, I have to tell you, the only machine that I grew up with was the ice cream machine at Michael's Dairy. That's the machine I grew up with. Not politics and backroom deals and dictatorship. There's a genuine care for New London, not only in myself, but my family as well. Politics, unfortunately, has divisions.
Thank you. You can add at the end.
Okay.
Darrell?
Well, I was asked earlier about my own partisanship, and my response was my partisanship follows my beliefs and my principles. I'm a Democrat because I'm a progressive, and I want the nominee of the Democratic Party to have Democratic Party values. I do not want a counselor who, from Riverside Park to all of our budget priorities, votes the same way as Rob Perot. It's a choice between the Democrat and the Republican in one of those elections where you say there's not much difference, I don't understand the difference between the two. I have profound differences of opinion with Rob Perot. I have democratic values, progressive values to bring into this general election and engage Mr. Perot in a real debate on the priorities in our city. And that's what I think we need. And I think that's how we're going to win. Because in the last election, Mike Buscetto led our party to its first defeat in 18 years. And the way he's going, we're heading to the second. We need a leader who can raise new energy, inject new life into our political system, and offer a real contrast and a real choice with the nominee of the Republican Party. That's how we energize our base. That's how we excite people who normally don't vote. That is how we win this election.
Mike, you can now finish your thought.
Sure. I don't know how it became Darrell's party, as he said, our party. He was not in town yet. Darrell has changed parties. He has changed platforms. He has changed cities pretty regularly. I have not. When you talk about leading the Democratic machine in our party, I think we shouldn't talk about the past. Let's talk about the present. I'm the endorsed candidate by the Democratic Party. They're the ones who have the faith in me. I believe the vote was 52-6.
Thank you very much. And we have another gentleman waiting, and then we'll take another question from Paul. Please.
Thank you for the gentleman. Reed Burdick. I vehemently oppose the land value tax, and now I oppose it and you more because you single out the Central Business District for the land value tax. The Central Business District right now pays the same tax rate as everybody else in the city.
Sir,
Yes.
your question.
The question is, right now, the Central Business District, in addition to paying regular taxes and a surcharge to the Central Business District, now will be levied with yet more and higher taxes because it shows it will. How does that, any way, shape, manner, or form, help anybody struggling in business downtown? It doesn't work.
Thank you. That was a question. Yes. And
It was a very calm and friendly question meant in the spirit of kindness and love, and I appreciate it. I believe that this method has been tested and proven to work. And as I say, we are a small city. We have tried other methods, and they have not worked. So if we keep trying the same thing, expecting a different result, we're not going to get it. We have to be willing to innovate. This is a pilot program that was approved by our own city council. It was approved by the Connecticut State Legislature, and the only reason we don't have it now is because the board took too long. They had 6 months to draw the zone, and they didn't hold enough meetings in time, and it didn't happen. Otherwise, we would know right now whether this works or not. And because it's a pilot program, if we attempt it and we see that we're not getting the results we need, we can remove it. It's not permanent. But downtown New London has languished for a very long time. This could work. Why do we not want to try it?
Mike?
I believe this is the time that I'd like everyone to pay close attention to. In a previous debate, candidate Finizio said he founded 100 companies as a private attorney. At this time, and at that time, I asked for the list. With that type of experience in business, New London should be okay. So at this time, I'd like you to please pass the list or explain even 10 companies that you helped found.
Well, sure. As an attorney, I've assisted in LLC startups, corporate paperwork, business planning for, my estimate would be, somewhere between 75 and 100, 125 different businesses in the over 6 years that I've practiced law. Because I am not in active practice at the time, my files are in storage, and most of them are also covered by legal confidentiality rules, Mike, which is the only reason why you don't have the list already. But I have experience in helping small business owners. I grew up in a small business, and I know what it is to be a small business person.
Thank you. Seeing no one at the microphone, Paul, did you want to ask another question?
And to who's the next question?
The next question goes to Mike.
Early in the campaign, Mr. Buscetto, you proposed converting a former prison in East Lyme to a regional facility for the homeless, and I was wondering how aggressively do you plan to pursue that idea if elected mayor?
I did that for one reason. I knew the head of the day paper, Gary Ferruggia, lived there. And that's why I proposed East Lyme. All kidding aside, the region needs to do their fair share to help our homeless, and they have not at this point. There have been 700 homeless people who visited New London in 2010. 70% of those people are not from New London. New London can no longer shoulder the burden alone. This is a regional approach to a regional problem. If we had to send 60 students to Groton, we would pay the tuition. But when Groton can send 60 homeless to New London for $3,000, I believe they made out a lot better.
Darrell?
First of all, I take issue with the comment, they're not from here. I hear it all the time. People been here 20 years say, I'm not from here. My definition of a New Londoner is that you're a human being, you're here, and you want to stay. And all human beings are entitled to equal dignity and equal respect, and I will not waver from that opinion. That said, we do need regional approaches to social services. However, Mike's rollout of his prison transformation relocation plan for the homeless was a textbook example of how not to release a plan in government. Because the first time the East Lyme First Selectman heard about it is when he read about it in the newspaper. If you want to get cooperation from your surrounding communities, you have to build that cooperation. You have to involve them in the process. And to convert a state facility, you're going to need state support, federal funds, permits from a different municipality of which you don't have jurisdiction. And if the first time any of these people are hearing about it is when they read about it in the newspaper, You have just demonstrated that you don't know how to actually effectively create regional solutions to regional problems.
My rebuttal, it's not owned by East Lyme. It's owned by the state of Connecticut. I spoke with the governor. I don't have to check in with Darrell to let him know who I'm speaking with. Darrell's a candidate for mayor. He's not on the council. What is the approach that Darrell Finizio is going to take for the 700 homeless people? What I gathered from his answer is nothing. So, ladies and gentlemen, to see New London turn around, the problem needs to be addressed, and I don't believe he's going to address it.
I'm going to step in here just for 1 minute and suggest that Darrell answer the question.
Okay. Well, I believe that we need a regional approach. However, I believe that to do that, we need to create cooperative dialogue first, not after the fact. In the interim, we need to create programs within our city that move homeless people to work. The most important thing that we can do to address homelessness is not to get people housing, it's to get people jobs. And growing a diversified small business-based economy through tax incentives, those tax incentives being tied to a small business being willing to hire homeless people. If you do that, you incentivize the businesses to give people jobs, and if people get jobs, they will soon not be homeless. They will have hope, they will have a future, and they will be a productive member of our city. And many people in this audience, I won't single them out, but I know them, and I know they're here, were homeless in our city. And they are not now. They are good, productive members of our community. And we need to stop painting all people who are homeless with a broad brush.
All right. And Mike, yes, please.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever painted them with a brush or said homeless people do not deserve help. What I said is we need help from our surrounding neighbors. To insinuate that I'm generalizing, I'm not. I have a specific plan. Darrell does not. This is a serious issue. You want people to move to New London. You want businesses to flourish in New London. You want the youth to have programming. But at the same time, you're going to support 700 and climbing homeless people as far away as New York, 23 of them, Florida, 19 of them. If you don't have a support system in place, it's going to be very hard to get a job. They need people to help them, relatives, to help them with their medication. There's mental illness. There's veterans. It's not a broad brush, but it's working towards a solution. This city can no longer take care of the social aspect of the surrounding region without help. I'll say it again. When we send students to other schools, we pay. When people send homeless or drop them off in a cruiser from Stonington, it's free.
I thought it was important to stretch that one out. That's a very important issue in this city. And I'm sorry to make you wait, sir. Please ask your question.
A question for both candidates. How do you feel about tax-free 10-year deals for incoming companies?
Could you say that one more time?
How do you feel about tax-free 10-year deals for incoming companies?
Tax-free.
Yeah.
10-year
10-year
incoming
deals.
companies.
All right, and that question goes to Darrell first.
Yes. Well, we all saw with the Pfizer debacle how this can go horribly wrong. We should not be giving any tax abatements, incentives to anyone unless those abatements and incentives are tied to real results and to a long-term commitment to be here. If we give them a 10-year deal but they leave within 20, they should owe those taxes back. Simple as that, and that should be in the initial contracts. However, I also think, though, that tax incentives and abatements, as I said, can be a good tool because they can encourage business to hire the unemployed, the homeless. They can bring business in, create jobs. But I think we need to refocus those incentives to small businesses because small businesses are more likely to employ locals and more likely to stay here. Whereas the large corporations, the minute there's a hiccup in the economy, they issue pink slips or they pull out of town and go somewhere else where the cost of doing business is cheaper. Our priority has been towards large corporations. We need to shift it to our local small businesses and to our local people.
Mike?
Okay, so the answer is, to the question, a 10-year tax-free abatement probably would not work. Pfizer is still in the property when the time took place, the largest taxpayer in the city of New London. Earlier, candidate Finizio talked about being innovative, and his plan for innovation is the land value tax, to tax everyone who's here already. I could only see what's going to happen to the people coming in. We're in a competitive environment, and when you compete, you need to separate yourself from your competition. And this is where it happens. The rent subsidy program that I put forward for the city council has generated the use by 18 businesses to stay in New London. It's support, but it's not free. You have to have a business plan, it has to be viable, and the Economic Development Office has to approve it. So if you came with a plan and the city council was behind it, you would have an incentive to do business in New London. It would be reduced, however, it would not be free.
All right. Darrell?
Land value tax is not a tax increase. But Mike will say it over and over again until people believe it. It's like the issue with the chief is about her pay, it's about her pay, it's about her pay, it's about her pay. No, it is not. Do not get distracted by the typical campaign stunts and rhetoric. I am not out to increase your taxes, but I am out to speak truth to you about legitimate new methods that can help move our city forward.
Thank you very much. We have a gentleman at the microphone, please.
Yes, I'm Gary Belargin, and I would like both candidates to articulate their...
We can't hear.
Yes, I would
There
like
you go.
both candidates to articulate their vision for the development of Fort Trumbull.
All right. We finally got to Fort Trumbull after an hour and 10 minutes, my goodness. That would be Mike's.
Okay. As a developer in the city of New London, it would be great to directly negotiate with other developers. That's what it's going to take. At this point, I'm the only candidate with project management experience. I have put teams together. When you build something, and when you develop something, it's more than just a plan and a promise. Every single person in this room can go see something that I did in New London. You cannot say that about candidate Finizio. There are people here from that neighborhood who believe in the one city, one team, who actually moved here. 4 from Waterford, 1 from Niantic, to New London. We did it, and we'll do it again.
Thank you.
My plan and my vision for Fort Trumbull is for a smart growth developed community integrated with green technology. I believe this would provide for our job base, for our long-term resource needs, and it would be more marketable because people believe in that cause and would come here to be a part of that. But I believe that that will not happen until the City of New London is in control of the development project. I have sought cooperative ways to accomplish this, but I have come to the conclusion that it will not happen as long as NLDC is standing in the way. If elected mayor of the City of New London, I will use all the power of this new office, both legal and political, to abolish NLDC and reclaim the destiny of the Fort Trumbull Peninsula for the people of the City of New London.
Please don't. I guess that was okay.
So,
Yes, Mike, please.
there's one small problem The state of Connecticut holds the mortgage on the property. I don't know how Darrell's going to get the state to just turn everything over. The state gave the money to the NLDC, not the city council. I wasn't here for that. But again, for someone to promise you something they have absolutely no experience in project management, that there's going to be development there, and that it's going to be back to the people, and the NLDC is going to be abolished, is misrepresenting the truth.
May I respond?
You may.
I would respond to that issue by saying that it is inconsistent for Mr. Buscetto to say, I'll talk to the governor and get him to convert a former prison into a homeless center, but somehow I won't be able to talk to the governor to get the state to abolish NLDC.
Please, let's respect the candidates and give them time to speak. Mike, do you want to say, I think you were
I'd just
not
like you to
quite
stick,
finished yet.
if you guys could just stick with the rebuttal part. It's,
Yes,
you know, if someone,
Yes,
I'm being
it's-
respectful, and I thank my supporters for being respectful as well during my discussions. This Fort Trumbull is going to take time. It's going to take leadership. We understand that. But I must tell you, and I'll go back to the superintendents, do not be fooled, New London. You have had people come here from all across the country who said they were going to take care of the schools. And they did not. They left. You had people promise you the world, padded resumes. They looked wonderful, gave wonderful interviews, but somehow fell flat. This comes from a person who's lived in 3 towns in 4 years. What's to say when and if he loses this election, he will move again?
I think your time is up. Now, we have 2 people standing at the microphone, and we are on limited time, so we will take those 2 questions, and then we will have closing statements. So, please.
New Londoners want a mayor to be proud of. Please detail the personal qualities that you feel you possess to make this possible.
Darrell, you're first.
I've been running for the office of mayor since January 2nd. We're in the final days now, and the contrasts are drawn and the heat ratchets up a little bit. But on the whole, look at the campaign I have run. It's not been about me, it's been about you. It's been about issues. It's been about our people, our neighborhoods, and it's been positive. We need a leader who can look to our future with a positive vision for where we're going and a positive sense of who we are. As I say, I moved to New London before this office was created, and win or lose this election, I'm staying here. Bought my first house here. Fell in love here. Love New London. I'm going nowhere. I
Mike?
know Mike might wish I do if he's elected mayor, but I'm staying.
Mike.
No, I've actually stated that I thought that someone that comes into town, I believe Darrell came in March 2010 and had a platform out a few months later, 40 pages. That's the quickest someone has figured out New London in the history of New London. It's not genuine. It's boilerplate. This is a person who went to school for politics, political science. I did not go to school for politics. New London needs real leadership. You know that. You voted for it. New London needs clean, safe, and walkable neighborhoods. You don't ask a lot. When you talk about personal qualities, you talk about volunteering in the community, I've done it. You talk about building in the community, I've done it. You talk about being a public servant, I've done it. But I didn't do it elsewhere, I did it in New London.
Thank you very much. Darrell, your rebut?
I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing in outside experience, as long as you have a true commitment to the community, which I believe I do. Whether anyone believes me or not, That's up to you to decide what's in your heart. I know what's in mine. I love New London, and I'm committed to our community. This is my home. But this is a political office. There are going to be budget referendum fights and council negotiations. There's going to be bond campaigns. Why is it bad to have someone who has skills in that area? Because that is what is actually going to get things done.
Thank you very much. Mike? Or, I'm sorry. Where's, sorry. We have a gentleman at the microphone. Please, yours is the last question.
Yes, Tom Clark. I would like to ask each candidate to pick one thing that they think is working in New London best, and why that is working best, and how they would help that move forward. Thank you.
Mike?
The electricity. I think what's working are the people. The people are working to make New London better. Save Ocean Beach, New London Main Street, the hygienic, the guard, the restaurateurs, the people who volunteer every day. It's working. It just needs improvement. We have a tremendous amount of volunteers in our community and a sense of community that I believe is untouched in the region and unmatched. We distinguish ourselves with our neighborhoods. New London, as I said earlier, doesn't need drastic change, what is being proposed. It needs an adjustment. It just needs accountability. I'm willing to take that role to the next level.
Darrell?
Well, this is one area where we agree. The people of New London are amazing. The nonprofits, the volunteers, the churches, the charities are doing amazing things throughout our city. But we do need leadership to coordinate between all these different people who are rowing hard in different directions. And you have two very interesting leadership styles here to choose from, because it's going to take cooperative, conciliatory leadership to bring this community together. And we've seen Councilman Buscetto's leadership style in the last 4 years. Is it a cooperative style? Is it a non-confrontational style? Or is it the style of a bull in a china shop? To bring the people of New London together, you have to be able to actually engage with all the people of New London and not be divisive, not be confrontational, but be open, listen. I believe that I have done that, not only throughout the course of this campaign, but throughout the course of my time in public service. I think it stands in contrast to the record we have seen in the last 4 years of Councilman Buscetto's tenure on the New London City Council.
Mike?
You know, I'm someone who tries to make change as well. And as you know, when you try to make change, some people aren't necessarily ready for that change. But I equate that to New London as a family. How many of you in this audience have had disagreements with your family? And, right? The whole group. How many times have you said things that maybe you shouldn't have said? And then time healed, and you got back together again. While candidate Finizio was in Westerly, Waterford, Rhode Island, we were working hard to resolve these issues. And as a family, we've regrouped. And so the disagreements that took place 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, just aren't there anymore.
Your time is up, Mike.
Thank you.
You'll get a chance to
I hope
throw
so.
in your last
All right.
bits and your closing statement. Yes.
Just two.
Our time is finished, and we need to be finished by 8:30, and they have closing statements to make. Thank you for that. That is an important question as well. I'm sure you'll be talking to these people again, so ask your questions to them directly. All right. Let's see. Mike, you started, so let Darrell have his closing statement first, and then you can finish with your closing statement.
Okay.
Each candidate has 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Darrell?
I actually
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how I had that. You're right. So, Mike, are you ready? You can be the first.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
I think
You need to take care of me.
if you're going to move this city forward as one city, as one team, you need talented people on your team. And over the past 9 months, despite me labeled by political opponents only, in my family life, married to my wife of 18 years, in Little League, and all the volunteer days, none of those labels were put on me. To the 10 homeowners that deal with me, none of those labels were put on me, just by political opponents. Well, I would like to announce tonight my Chief of Staff, and I would like Darrell to introduce his as well. The gentleman's name is Chris Soto. Chris is a multi-talented young man that I've worked with over the past 9 months to see if we could work together for the next 4 years. And I believe in him. Chris graduated from the Coast Guard Academy. Recently has graduated from Brown University with a master's in public administration. Aside from that, he spent 5 years as a Coast Guard officer leading their anti-terrorism efforts as a leader. He also worked as the Assistant Director of Diversity at the United States Coast Guard Academy. I can always say that as we promise, and as New London sits here and waits for things to happen, there is going to be a transition period. We are ready for that transition. How can you care and how can you know so much about a city and its needs by being here for a few months?
Your time is up, Ms. Mike.
Thank you.
Darrell, your closing statement? No, not yet. We're going to clap for them heartily in a moment. 2 moments.
Well, I'm glad Mike is picking out his cabinet before the voters have spoken. I am a little old-fashioned. I think I'd like to wait and see what the results of the primary are, never mind the general election, before announcing every staff selection. However, I do congratulate Mr. Soto. Apparently it's in the bag. What I'll say is this. I'm not from Mars. I'm just from Westerly. It's 10 miles over there. I have family here. They're sitting right in the front row who've lived here their whole life. I've been coming here my whole life to New London. My family started here in the 1840s. My mother worked here for AT&T in the 1950s. Don't tell me I don't know New London. I'm a new resident. I'm new, but I'm not out of the blue. And in the course of this campaign, I've done something you haven't. I've knocked on doors, and not just a couple hundred, a couple thousand, all over the city, not just where people vote, not just where people are registered, everywhere, talking to everyone, because I want to be the mayor for all the people of New London, a representative and a fighter for every neighborhood, for every community, for every person, and that's something we've not had. I believe that New London does need change. It's tough to embrace someone that's so new. I know that. But I do believe that it is what our city needs. And if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't have run. I have a good job. I taught this morning. Class loved it. It was great. It was fun. I came home. I got to walk my dogs. It's a nice life. I didn't give that up to come here and engage in the brutal blood sport of politics for my health. I did it because I believe I have something to offer, and I have always believed in the worthy sacrifice of public service. And if you elect me your mayor, I will use all the skills, all the training at my disposal to serve you always, and I will always be honest with you, I will always be open to you, and I will serve you above all.
Thank you very much. Now, can we wait just 1 minute for that? I would like to encourage all of you who are registered Democrats to be sure to go to the polls on Tuesday. If you still have questions from these candidates, I'm sure they're very open to responding to your questions in private or in setting up some other sort of a meeting. I want to thank all of you for your commitment to democracy, and I want to thank very much our candidates tonight who did an excellent job.
Thank you.